they sent me to a specialist, and the specialist said, well, there isn't really any hope now. In these cases, what normally happens is it just progresses and it gets worse and worse and worse, and you will be in a wheelchair, and then it will just get worse, and you will actually end up dying. 2 years it will get to that point.
Welcome to a new episode of Chi Chat. My name is Robin Gao, and today I am joined by Fiona McLaughlin. Fiona is a REN XUE teacher from New Zealand who, using Yuen Gong and life cultivation, cured herself from a life-threatening illness. In this episode, we talk to her about her transformation and how she has now dedicated her life to uplifting herself and helping others. She is a bright light in this world, and I feel a true warmth when I am with her. And I am so looking forward to this conversation.
Hello, Fiona.
Hello, Robin. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I have been patiently awaiting for our time together, and I'm really excited about this.
Well, I am too. It's so beautiful to spend time with you. You're so lovely.
Thank you. Thank you. So I wanted to talk to you originally about how you got into REN XUE, and then I thought, we made a film about you, and it's available. And Fraser and we made a film, and he came to your house kind of in and out of the lockdown situation during the pandemic. And then I would zoom in and interview you. And then I think we ended up having about 6 hours of content that we condensed into a 13-minute short film about your experience. So we won't go into all the details because a lot of it is there. But I did just want to kind of talk to you about where you were before you found REN XUE. Like what was that life like before REN XUE?
Oh, well, it was kind of a very depressing life before I found REN XUE, actually. I was very consumed by performance, and I had to be perfect, and that had led me to quite extreme behavior in my life. So I had kind of added things to my life, more and more things to do in the outside world. And then I had really overwhelmed myself with that. And I ended up getting very ill, and I ended up having to leave my job because I couldn't do it anymore. And I got very ill, and I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and adrenal fatigue. And it got to the point where they sent me to a specialist, and the specialist said, well, there isn't really any hope now. Because at that point I could hardly walk very well. I could make it down to the dairy, the corner shop, and then, which was about 5 minutes walk, but I couldn't make it back. So I'd have to ask my partner to come and get me. And really, I basically just was at home all day. And the specialist said, well, in these cases, what normally happens is it just progresses and it gets worse and worse and worse, and you will be in a wheelchair, and then it will just get worse, and you will actually end up dying. And I said, oh, okay, well, what will happen? He said, well, in about 2 years it will get to that point. So I asked him, what can we do about this? And he said, well, nothing really, that he would just have to give me morphine eventually. So, yeah, my life wasn't great at all. It was terrible, really.
And
That's when I found REN XUE.
Yeah. I think there's some people that would be given that information and they would say, okay, this is my destiny. I'll be in a wheelchair and this is what my life is. But you didn't do that. You took a different path. What in you said, I'm looking for something else, or I'm choosing something else?
Well, it's quite a weird experience in a way, because I did go and look for what else could help me in the more alternative kind of medicine path. But at the same time, I got to this different place, which I hadn't been to, where before I was all about being perfect. So it actually, in some weird way, gave me this place where I could give up. So I could actually take some time for myself. So in a way, I surrendered to it and I stopped trying to keep going. But I still did other things as well. But it was I wasn't doing the things that I tried to do before. Like I didn't think, oh, okay, I'm going to get back to work in 2 months, right? That's where I was before. I was like, okay, I'll fix myself, and in a month and a half, I'll be back at work. Now it was just like, this is what it is. And if I die, I die. If I don't, I don't. And now I'll just enjoy it. I'll just enjoy being here, right here in this moment. That was a big shift for me. That really helped me.
In some way, would you say kind of your desperation turned into determination, or was it more surrender?
It was more surrender, definitely. It actually gave me the space so some of my habitual ways of being didn't have to play out anymore. So in some ways, it really did help me.
When we made the film about you, and in the film you said, at the time I didn't understand. I just thought I was physically ill. But now I realize that it was my own mind that had got me there.
Yeah.
Can you explain more about that? Can you say more?
I thought it was a physical illness, and it was a physical illness, but I didn't realize that for me, I had created it, in that I had a lot of habitual ways of thinking in my mind about myself and habitual ways of feeling about myself. And they were playing out every day, and they led to behaviors that I would carry out. And I had kind of overdid it so much that my body was protesting about that. And it kind of wanted to give up. And it did. And I had to learn to not be in those ways of being anymore. And that's how REN XUE helped me. because in REN XUE they call that patterns that play out in your consciousness and patterns that play out in your heart. And those patterns often created very early in your life. It can even be created, through your parents or even before in your culture. So, and they come from all different places, but I was very much ruled by them.
And can you describe like how a pattern is created and then how it's set in motion? Like how does it fundamentally work?
Okay, so what tends to happen is that there may be an event that happens to you, and it might be as a kid. So for me, one that I always like to think into is such a simple thing. It doesn't have to be something really big and major and traumatic. It can be something quite tiny. But one day my father was ill and he had to stay home from work. So he usually took his lunch to work. And so my mum gave me his sandwiches to eat. And I never had seen a sandwich. I was only 4 years old. And she gave me the sandwich and it was a very big, I didn't realize it was lots of sandwiches stacked on each other. I thought I had to eat all of it. So it's this big lump of sandwich. And I tried to, I'm only tiny, I'm 4, try to get it into my mouth. And I couldn't get it into my mouth. And then my mum came out and laughed at me. Of course, it was funny. I mean, it was funny. You couldn't really not laugh. But at that moment, I created a pattern that people were laughing at me. And so that pattern's job was to kind of scan around and see, are people laughing at me now? And so I noticed that I would feel criticized quite, a lot. And if I noticed when I watched this pattern that if someone like slightly smiled, that's when the pattern would start doing its thing. And so
when the pattern got triggered, what did you do? Like, what was your response?
Well, I would feel terrible inside and I would feel ashamed of myself. And then I would try to shrink away. And then I just feel like everyone around me could see this terrible thing about me. And then I'd just be kind of trying to hide. But meanwhile, I was feeling utterly terrible. So it would lead me to not want to be out there, particularly socially. I would just kind of shrink away, try not to put myself in situations where I was like in the limelight. I hated that, really, really hated that. I would never have done an interview like this, that's for sure. This pattern would not want me to do this interview.
Yeah, that makes sense. So some of us can remember these experiences of the first time we experienced, embarrassment, or the first time we wanted to cry and we chose not to, and we suppressed that emotion. What do we do with that information? If we have that memory, what do we do next with it? How do we kind of use that information to put the pieces together of our own patterning?
Okay, so in REN XUE, we've got a process called REN XUE, which is a method which helps us investigate our own patterns. And it's an incredibly powerful method. And I use this a lot. And it's a conversation that you have between your heart and your true self. And your heart asks questions of your true self, which the true self is like a place of immense wisdom. So in REN XUE, we do a lot of work on being able to access and find that place through a lot of other methods, practicing moving Qigong, and through also opening the heart, a method called Tong Wan that opens the heart. This all helps us get access to our true self, because our true self is actually easily accessed from the heart. So in Ling Wan, this process, which is to help us work on patterns, we have a conversation between the heart and the true self. And the true self gives us answers, which are wisdom answers. And that can really help us understand the truth behind our past. So it can let us see, for instance, with the sandwich event, I thought what was happening was the truth, right? I thought that my mum was laughing at me. And I thought there was something wrong with me. But when I did Ling Wan on it, my true self saw in a very deep way that actually my mum was just laughing because it's kind of like a natural reaction. Now, as an adult, when I think through it, of course, I kind of know that. I know that intellectually, that of course, she's not really laughing at me. But in the conversation, in the Ling Wan conversation, I actually knew for the first time, rather than not just my consciousness, I knew that this is true, that my mum isn't laughing at me. And at that moment, having that experience, it's almost like an experiential experience. It's like almost recreates that moment for you, so you can move on from that moment, because what can happen in Ling Wan is we're stuck in a loop. It's like not in our patterns, we're stuck in a loop going round and round and round in that same moment. And that moment kind of then recreates itself through our life. So in the Ling Wan conversation, I actually got to see that the world was very different than what I had perceived it to be. And then just that information helped me resolve the pattern. So the pattern actually kind of disappeared. I created a new replacement pattern, which is part of Ling Wan. But and after that, practicing that replacement pattern, after a while, the old pattern just disappeared. So that's why I can sit here today and have this interview, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to, actually.
Right. Yeah. When do you remember doing Ling Yuan on this pattern, on this specific instance? Like, can you give us an example of maybe what a replacement pattern would be for, something like this? Because, it sounds like you were almost like viewing this experience, through the unification of Xin and Shen, the heart and the true self. You're viewing the experience again, but from totality or from a different perspective than the 4-year-old feeling like they were being laughed at. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. And in Ling Wan, different things can happen. I mean, it's not always like this. So you just don't really know what your true self will show you. So what I'm talking about, maybe not where you would get, some resolution from. It could be entirely different information. You just really don't know. But the replacement pattern that I created, I can't actually remember it because I can't even remember the pattern. But, it may have been something like, for me, because I often created this kind of pattern, you are love, you are a radiant being, part of the universe. You're a miracle of life.
And then you build that replacement pattern into kind of your life from that point on. Is that how you apply it in some way?
Yeah, I practice feeling it. So I feel how it feels in my body, and I feel how it feels in my consciousness to have that pattern, because having that new pattern creates new way of being inside the consciousness, where it won't have the thoughts that it would have normally had. And then it leads to new behaviors. So I practice it by building a chi field. So, this is just kind of what I do. I just wake up in the morning, and when I've got a new pattern and I want to practice it, I'll build a chi field for that pattern.
The replacement pattern, or the upgraded version of the pattern.
Yeah. And then I will practice feeling that new pattern during the day as I go through my day. And when I get up, I also notice the places where the old pattern would normally get triggered. Like for me, in social situations, it's likely that this pattern would come up. So what I do is I practice another method, which is called Mingwan. And it's a place where you go into awareness from the true self. And from that place, you can see if you are going into a pattern. So I see if I'm going into the pattern, and then I immediately transform it into my replacement pattern. So I feel I'm going into the old pattern, I immediately transform it into the new pattern. And that's an amazing thing to do, because if you're in the old pattern less and less time, and the new pattern more and more time, it really does change the structure of your consciousness. So after a while, all this old information has been replaced by new information. So,
right.
Yeah, that's how I deal with it. And I'll feel it when I'm practicing moving Qigong.
The replacement pattern, the new pattern.
Yeah, the replacement pattern. I just try and feel it as much as I can.
It's kind of like updating your software, like you're updating with the new information, and the old information is leaving.
But you're also you're creating an access to your true self, which we often don't normally have in our life. So by being in the replacement pattern, we access our heart and the true self. So instead of our consciousness running the show, where the patterns often live in the consciousness, so that's where our false self often lives. It has been switched around, so our focus is now towards the true self. So we're trying to get our focus to be, instead of looking in this direction, we're now looking in this direction. And we're just practicing that as much as we can.
Right. And I think, so the Ling Yuan practice that you've been talking about, it is a self-inquiry practice. So, you're inquiring yourself as to why you do the things you do, or think the things you think, or feel the things you feel. Why is it so important to unify Xin and Shen? Because I think that is a really distinguishing factor that we have in this system to unify. Sorry, I'll use the other term, the heart and the true self. The unification of the heart and the true self makes this different than another self-inquiry or other things that are available on the inquiry side of things. Can you explain the importance of that?
It is very different from other modalities. And I think it's much more directive. I think in other modalities, it can feel like you're kind of floating around trying to find something. But in this modality, it's got a kind of clear direction of what to do. So you're working on creating a relationship with your own heart. And that relationship is about being in the states of trust, openness, love, gratitude, and gongjing. And practicing being able to be in those states consistently. And being in those states just naturally opens you to an experience of the true self. So it's kind of a clear system in REN XUE of helping you be able to open your heart, so then that will give you access to your true self. So the system has a step-by-step way of doing that. And then when you're open to your true self, you'll get access to wisdom that you maybe hadn't had access to before. And the whole system will end up transforming your life into a place where you have much joy and happiness in it. It's a quite incredible system.
How did you start to build a relationship with your heart? We talk about the states, and you mentioned them earlier: trust, openness, love, gratitude, and then we have the fifth one, which is gongjing, which is a composite quality. How did you start to, we have a practice, which is a guided meditation called Tong Yuan. But beyond Tong Yuan, how did you start to build that relationship with your heart?
Well, I did Tong Yuan every day on trust. So I did it without fail every day. That really did very much contribute to what happened for me opening my heart. But I also practiced feeling the 5 Shin, those qualities of openness, trust, love, gratitude, and gongjing, and other heart qualities as well, other positive heart qualities. I practiced feeling those. So I would just do that in my daily life. Try to be in that state as much as I could in the heart. And my method of doing it all was very, very experiential. I just did it by doing. I did the dishes while feeling love. I walked up the stairs while feeling trust. I had a conversation with someone and tried to stay inside myself feeling trust. I would just practice and practice and practice. And when I got out of that state, then I knew I was in a pattern, and I would try to go back into the heart space. And if I couldn't, I would go and do Ling One. It was quite simple, really. In the
make
way
it sound
I did
very
it.
simple. Yeah.
No,
You
but
make
I
it
mean, it wasn't that simple, but the mechanism was simple of what to do. Yeah. Yeah.
And, it's interesting because the first heart quality that is taught is trust. And that can be one of the hardest to learn. But I like that instead of using it on a person, you use the stairs, like that seems easier to trust stairs than it is other people sometimes. So that's a really good tip. Use gravity to start.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you can trust your cat, your pet.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But of course my cat isn't that trustworthy, really. But,
Okay.
but say if your cat scratches you, trust that that's what's meant to have happened.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that everything in your life is now going to go really great. It's not like a method to get you to a perfect life.
But I think,
but it paradoxically does do that, because while you might have things that might not happen that are that great around you sometimes, you don't feel like, I don't feel like that anymore. I don't feel like, oh, this terrible thing has happened. I actually usually go, oh, wow, this is amazing. So it's a really strange paradox. And it's hard to know in the end what's good and what's bad. It's a whole new place of being.
Do you have an example of something recently that went, quote unquote, badly? That you 5, 7, 10 years ago, you would have said, this is bad. And now you think, wow, this is something to learn. Or, I don't know, whatever state you arrive in when that thing is happening. But can you give a recent example?
Oh, it's so hard for me to do that because everything I feel is good. Okay. Well, my mother-in-law was very ill, and she had to come, and we had to go and help her come into a retirement home now and move up here. So we had to help her sell her house and move up here. And normally I would be like, oh my God, my life is too full of stuff to do that. I can't do that. But to me, it's actually been an incredible experience, an incredible heart-opening experience. So something where I would have got all into rushing around and it was just this big pain to do, now has been a beautiful, incredible thing. I mean, it's just a little thing. I mean, it's not really even that bad, is it? But in my past, it would have been quite stressful.
But this is something that I think a lot of people can relate to, is aging parents, and the transition from having independent parents to having parents that need a lot more assistance. And that is a really stressful thing that many people can, well, I perceive it as stressful. You perceive it as an incredible heart-opening experience. But, this is something that people can relate to. It's a big life transition.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even death can be an incredible opening experience as well, heart opening experience. So, and for instance, a while ago, I had this incredible toothache issue, and it was excruciatingly painful. But that also was this incredible experience as well. It really helped me transform myself, and I learned so much from it. And in the end, I felt it was a lot of beauty in it.
Can you say more about that? Because I have to say, I am someone that has had a lot of dental trauma. We've talked about this a little bit, but I've had the braces, I had double jaw surgery, I've had dental implants, I have been through it. And, at one point I was so scared of the needles for having a cavity filled. I just had the cavity filled without any Novocaine because I couldn't handle, to me, the idea of having a cavity filled without a needle felt better than having the numbing, because I didn't want, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't make any sense now, but so tell me, how do you find the wisdom in a toothache?
Well, this toothache was a wisdom tooth that had never come out, it was stuck inside my jaw. And I didn't really know what was going on, but it was excruciating. And then when I went to the dentist said you're going to have an operation to get it out, and it's going to take a long time, because we'll have to put you on a waiting list to have, they're going to put you out, cut into you. That's how, it's not going to be fun. It's a proper operation. So, meanwhile, I had to live with the pain for quite a long time, and I was just like, okay, I'll just feel the heart quality kind of inside the pain. And so I just practiced doing that. Practice and practice and practice. And then one day after practicing, it just disappeared. The pain actually disappeared. And it never came back. And I was just like, well, what do I do? Do I have this operation? But I thought, well, okay, I have to have the operation. It's structural. And I actually asked Jan Sue about it. And he said, yeah, you need to have the operation. It's a structural issue. So up to the operation, never, ever came back. But even when I had...
that is? Why do you think?
Because I was in... because I was in the heart quality. And I had practiced it so much that I could be in it. And so I could have the pain and feel complete love. And the pain stopped feeling like pain. It started feeling just like a sensation. I didn't have the information attached to it anymore that it was pain. It had no information attached to it. So it could have whatever information I added to it, which was love. And when it had love, I don't know, it transformed itself. So, well, it was very valuable learning for me that it really, really works to do that on everything.
And do you do it on everything now?
Yeah.
And do you, when you're in, I mean, I guess at this point you're always in your heart. or almost always in your heart, do you still see things transforming?
Absolutely. I'm growing all the time. I'm learning all the time. It's a process that, it's an amazing process to keep being able to learn, because there's more things to learn every moment about the universe and how it works, about my true self, about how to be unified and how that feels, and deeper places to go to.
And those deeper places we talk about, relaxed, calm, and natural. Are you bringing those states, into every moment of every day? Or, how do you, I guess, how are you engaged? We're using the heart, we're using the true self. We have these various states that we work with, but, how do you continue to grow, I guess?
Well, I practice Dry Cha, Ming Wan all the time. So I'm continuously doing that. And that's just an incredible practice. Like, that for me is the most powerful practice of all the methods. And because you can do it all the time. You can even do it when you're asleep, actually. So every moment there's opportunity to learn from that.
Can you talk about, so if the practice is Ming Yuan, we use something called Joy Cha, which is awareness from the true self. Can you talk about getting into that state and how to use it kind of in a daily practice?
So there's kind of tools to use, which what we're trying to do is be in a state of relaxed, calm, natural, integrated, unified, harmonious. And at the beginning of practicing that, you may only start off with, say, I'm going to practice being relaxed. And when you're in that place being relaxed, you're not just being relaxed, which you are, but you're actually watching yourself from that place. So what is very interesting to notice is that we have all this stuff going on inside of ourselves, but actually there is something that can watch all of that all the time. And that thing that's watching is a very different place than all the stuff going on inside of ourselves, all these patterns playing out, all the false self doing its thing, all the feelings that we have. This place that's watching is the place we need to get more understanding and awareness of and experience of being in. So Ming Wan helps us practice being in that place and watching. So we go into the place of being relaxed and watching what else is going on inside of ourselves. And when those things are going on inside of ourselves, we practice being relaxed. So we practice not getting attached to those things, so that those things don't capture us and we don't end up merging with those things. So thoughts that aren't helpful or feelings that aren't helpful, we actually can be watching those things instead. And then what we learn from that is that those thoughts and feelings aren't actually us. Actually, the thing that's watching is actually us. And that is our true self. So when I practiced Dre Cha originally, I practiced each of the tools separately. So relaxed, I started with relax, and I went on to calm, and then I went on to natural, and I practiced being in that state. And as I did so, I got more mastery over being able to not be swept away and being captured by my own thoughts and feelings. And then I learned that I wasn't my thoughts and feelings. So we identify with those thoughts and feelings as being us and those patterns as being us. But they aren't at all. There's something else. And we can learn that. That's why Mingwan's so amazing.
And I want to tie this back to kind of your original entry point into REN XUE, which is you had fibromyalgia, you had adrenal fatigue, you had these body sensations. And I mean, I know there's a lot of information coming out right now, and there has been for a while around mind-body medicine and that sort of thing. But how did you kind of deconstruct your thoughts, and how did they arrive into the body to change your body? Like, can you connect those two things for us?
Well, it was a process. It wasn't just about deconstructing my thoughts or feelings. It was also about practicing moving Qigong, which Ren XUE, the initial methods are moving Qigong methods. Those methods help me build up my Qi in my body and also help me create Qi flow through my body, so help my body be more healthy. But working on the patterns, working on Ling 1, I could see that actually the pain in my body was coming from those patterns. Because one day when I did Ling 1, even though I was getting better physically from doing the moving Qigong, I would have things happen in my life which would just put me back right in the same place. Like immediately those things happened. And when I looked at what was happening, it was the patterns that would get triggered in those moments that would create it. So what would happen for me would be originally, if I had been triggered in a small way, my left shoulder would get sore, and then it would move down my left arm, and my left arm will kind of get paralyzed, and then it would start going from my right shoulder down my right arm, and then it would start going down my whole body. And when I practiced the replacement pattern, all of that would go away. So I knew then it was directly related to my pattern. But in doing the moving Qigong helped me keep enough Qi in my body so I didn't get triggered as much. So that helped as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I guess, I mean, that's the perfect ability to see if it's working or not. If you're in your pattern, you can't feel your arms. When you're in your replacement pattern, that sensation goes away.
Yeah.
And it's incredible
Yeah.
you
And
had
it
such a
wouldn't,
clear distinction.
yeah. Yeah. And it wouldn't get to the point where my whole body was, back to where it was, because I could find that place. I could go, oh, right, it's starting to happen. Better do something about it. And then I would practice the new pattern. If I needed to do it, I'd do Ling Wan, and it would go away.
You started practicing in 2018, like you learned about the REN XUE system in 2018, and then you have had this unbelievable ability to apply the system. I am truly...
Desperation made me apply the system.
Yeah, but it's incredible. It's something that's really, I think really needs to be mentioned, that, the system is only as good as you can apply it. And you did that wholeheartedly. To the point where you reached self-realization. Can you explain what that means?
Well, it's a very loaded term, isn't it?
I know. I know. In some ways, it's like, why identify it as something? But
Yes.
it's an important step in this life cultivation system and process, right? So,
Yes.
what does it mean? What does it feel like?
So, what it means is that I have much more continuous access to my true self, and I've seen my true self. And I also have access to my heart, and in my heart. And this is quite an incredible place to live from. But it's not the end of the journey. It is just the beginning of the journey. And it doesn't mean the work has finished at all. But, it changed my life completely, of course. It changed my life completely. It was an incredible experience to go through and have that moment where a lot of my patterns just became resolved in one split second, which is what happened for me when I went through it. So, yeah, it was amazing. It's an amazing thing. But it is achievable for everyone. It is just about applying yourself. It's not like it is, everyone can do it. It's just do the method and you will get there. It's not like it won't. It's not like it's good luck or bad luck. It's just keep going. Never give up on it. Just keep going.
Yeah. It reminds me, I mean, this is a little bit silly, but it reminds me, my sisters and I, we all had the same math teacher in high school. This is a big tangent, okay? But
that's okay.
We all had the same math teacher in high school. His name was Mr. Torget. He's probably never going to hear this, but Mr. Torget, I would go and ask him for help. I would say, Mr. Torget, I don't understand this math issue. Or can you help me solve or get started on this math problem? And I wasn't very good at math in high school. So, we were beyond the basics by the time we got to high school. But I would say, Mr. Torget, can you help me with this math problem? And he would go, oh yeah, you just do the math. That was his solution. I was like, I know, but I can't do the math. I'm asking for help.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
in some
yeah,
ways, it's like you just do the practice. You just apply the system, and then the system
yeah.
works on you. I mean, is that kind of how it goes? You just do the math?
That's right. And the things that think they can't do the math are usually patterns that think they can't do the math. So they put a lot of barriers in your way. So one of the first things to do is to do Ling 1 on the things that think they can't do it. And once they are cleared out, then the belief in yourself, the trust in yourself is there. The trust in the system is there, and that will carry you through. So that can be a big thing in the way of doing all of this work, is the belief that I can't do it, I don't know how to do it, I don't know what to do, the system doesn't work. All of those things are actually patterns. And if we work on all of those, and we also work on our heart so we can feel more trust and openness, then that will really help us be able to make more progress.
How did you know to trust the system?
I didn't trust the system at the beginning at all. I thought it was very strange. And I thought it might be like, is it kind of like, I think I had this distrust of all systems. That was weird stuff. So I had that going for quite a long time. And it wasn't until, later that I realized, it's not just this system that I have an issue with. I might have this distrust about. It's other systems as well. And then I realized, it's a pattern. Because a pattern usually shows up in lots of different places. That's a real sign of a pattern, that it's not just in one part of your life, it's in all different parts of your life. So, then when I looked at that pattern, I realized, this kind of goes back to the sandwich. It's gone along the same lines of the sandwich, because I had this distrust of people pulling the wool over my eyes. And like I would be carried along by something, and then they would laugh at me. And they'll go, ha, 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 that's not real. We've kind of, done you over, or something like that.
Like a setup in some way. You were set up to fail, or you were set up to,
set up by something just wanting to laugh at me. Mm-hmm. When I realized that, when I did Ling 1, I saw that, and that really helped me resolve that pattern and go, okay, I can trust it. The thing that thinks it can't trust it doesn't trust anything, really. It doesn't trust the whole world. Why don't I just practice trusting things? How can it hurt me to trust things? Obviously there's things that are obviously you've got to protect yourself from, but
And you want to says that, right? Like he says, this is not blind trust. We're not practicing that.
We're not practicing blind trust.
Right.
But most of the world isn't out to get us. And if we stay in that place of trust, then that also leads them to be able to trust us. I mean, if people don't feel trusted, they can feel it,
Mm-hmm.
even if we're not saying it to them. And then they react, and their patterns get triggered. So we really help the world by being in trust. It's really important for the whole growth of the whole world.
One thing that happens, and Yuansa has talked about this, one thing that happens when we reach self-realization is we become very mission-driven. You know, we can
Yes.
become very clear in what our mission is. Can you
Yes.
describe what yours is?
Yes. It is to help transform the world, to help transform everybody's hearts so they can experience being in joy and happiness and love and trust and openness and gongjing in each and every moment. There's my mission.
Beautiful. Well, you have a retreat coming up. You are coming to America. Have you ever been to the States? Have you been here
No,
before?
I've never been to the States.
First time in America. Well, this is amazing. Well, Fiona will be coming to the North Bay, just outside of San Francisco in California. She will be in the States. I guess the retreat dates are September 21st through 25th. And the retreat is called, I'm looking it up here, Create a Loving and Open-Hearted World. And registration will be opening soon. Or it should be opening soon if it isn't already. And
It is opened already.
Okay, it's opened already. And if you'd like, you can experience what it's like to be with Fiona. And I will tell you, it's incredible. You know, being in the presence of someone that is in their heart and in their true self truly can transform the state you are in and your own patterns. And I've had that experience. I have a long way to go, but you know, I've begun at least, I guess. So
You're doing very well, I feel, Robin.
I'm working on it. But if you're interested, come and join us in September, and you can be with Fiona and learn some of the ways. I mean, I think you have a really interesting way of helping people access their heart. You know, we have the methods within REN XUE, but you've come up with these incredible tools and tricks and tips and various ways to access it and to remove some of those blocks.
Yeah. I'm very happy to be doing this workshop because it's a 5-day workshop, and it just feels like we can really work on opening our hearts and work on the patterns in a very deep way and be able to be in the experience of being with each other in such a safe place so that we can actually have a very deep heart experience. And I have been practicing some new exercises and things for us to do so that we can have transformation. I'm very, very happy about it all. Actually, I feel that we can all learn together. It'll be very beautiful.
There's something to be said about learning together. You know, like there is in the collective, there is something really important about it. Do you have any sense, or can you explain it any differently than that? or a better way to describe why it's so important to be together?
We all create a chi field together. So it's very powerful when we're all together. It actually, everybody's growth helps everybody else. So just like being able to be in your heart with somebody gives them the experience of having someone with them that isn't in patterns. And just having a real small moment of that can actually transform you. It can actually be really healing to get the thing, because your patterns actually do want love and trust and openness, etc., etc., but they're just going the wrong way about getting it. You're just going down this track that's the wrong direction. But they want that. They want safety and they want connection. And when someone is with you that is in their heart, that can actually transform the pattern in that very moment, because it just brings in all this wisdom in that very moment, and the pattern just can transform just like that. So if we're all doing this, if someone beside you is doing that, it can transform you. And if you're doing it, you can help transform another. That's why it's very powerful being in a group. Incredible power in a group.
Amazing. Well, wonderful. Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you, Robin.
We'll see you in a few short months in America.
See you then.
In these conversations, I speak with members of this beautiful community to hear about how the REN XUE system is finding its way into the world, how it's being applied, and the stories of transformation. My wish is to connect our incredibly diverse and global community in new and interesting ways through the power of sharing our stories. If you like this episode, please subscribe to the REN XUE TV channel.